Wonderful. So thank you so much for being present for our last literary salon. Just went over tag tools and a little bit about what is a teaching artist. Teaching artists are everywhere in schools, community centers, libraries, and places of higher education. They are also in museums, correctional facilities, businesses, and wellness centers. They are in so many additional places because teaching artists are versatile. They actively create art while teaching others to do so. Teaching artists come from every artistic field: music, dance, theater, visual arts, writing, media, and more. I also want to highlight that this session is being recorded, so you can check it out on our YouTube channel, and also past recordings, and highlight that this is Black History Month, and Black Lives Matter at Schools has incredible resources for teachers and educators. They just finished their week of action the first week of February. However, they have resources called the Year of Purpose, where they have different months catered to different themes. So I highly recommend you check out Black Lives Matter at Schools and our past workshop with them. So now it is my honor to introduce Eric Booth, our lead facilitator for our workshop today. I would love to just introduce Eric with a bio, and he did say it needs to be very short, but I do want to give you credit where credit is due. And Eric Booth is an actor. He's performed in many plays on Broadway, off-Broadway, around the country. He's played over 33 Shakespearean roles, and I love that because I love classical theater. He's even won Best Actor awards on both coasts. He is the first person to receive an honorary doctoral degree in New England Conservatory in 2012 for teaching artistry. He received the American for the Arts 2015 Arts Educator Leadership Award, the most prestigious award in the U.S. arts education, the first teaching artist to ever receive this award. So a lot of visibility is due to Eric Booth. I do want to share that he has written and published many books, but one of the ones that we're going to focus on today is Making Change. And that book was published in 2023, so last year, Making Change, Teaching Artists and Their Role in Shaping a Better World. The first book that introduces teaching artistry to those who don't know what it is, or those who do but could do much more. So I'm going to add the link to his website in the chat. So if you're curious about his book and to learn more, please check that out. And then I'd also like to introduce Victor Sawyer from Memphis, Tennessee, who is who was a co-chair in the Teaching Artists National Advisory Committee, a current NAC member. He also serves as a fellowship coach for the Memphis Music Initiative and is working with a team of teaching artists to create engaging and impactful arts programming for youth in underdeserving communities throughout the greater Memphis area, and as an instrumental teaching artist at the world-famous Stax Music Academy. We are so grateful to have Victor here as a NAC member, as a teaching artist, and as an activist and an advocate to have this conversation. Freelance trombonist, frequently recording at legendary studios such as Sun and Royal and Arden. A very cool cat, and has also performed at Dizzy's Club in New York City. So that is amazing because Dizzy's is an incredible jazz place. So really extraordinary teaching artist here for this conversation. And with that, I'm going to spotlight you, Eric. Here we go.
Super. Thank you so much. And thank you and your colleagues who are here to help, and everyone in the US. It's Friday afternoon. I mean, so these are truly the maniacs. God love the maniacs who will come together on a Friday afternoon to think about teaching artistry together. This session is not going to be so much about this book as where this book came from. The idea behind this book was when I recognized our field didn't have anything written that we could hand to somebody who didn't know about teaching artistry to get them interested, to get them excited, to get them moving toward our field, and those even within our field and in the arts who need to know more. So that was the impulse that had me write this book. So you know, it's a self-published book, and I raised some money to be able to give away free copies. If you go to the book's webpage, which is teachingartistsmakingchange.com, we've been able to give away over 3,500 copies around the world. as an instigation to bring people into teaching artistry. The focus of this session is on teaching artists as advocates for teaching artistry. That issue has come up a whole lot in my, now it's 10 months of work around this book. And at one point of this session, I'm going to even give you the somewhat struggling history of teaching artists advocating for teaching artistry, and my sense that maybe there's an opportunity for change to make us more visible, to give us the power that we actually have in the world. Before we dig into any of that, I'd love to do a couple of polls, quick polls to see where our participants today stand on two issues. So poll number one, which Carrie will bring up for us, takes a look at your sense of advocacy for the field of teaching artistry in general. How would you describe your, that's poll number two. Let's
No,
start with one.
did the wrong one. Here
That's
we go.
okay. So poll number one looks at, in general, how would you describe the state of advocacy for the field of teaching artistry in the US? What's your answer? And if you're a betting person, what do you think is going to be our predominant answer?
Got some people still thinking.
All right. So this is our general take on advocacy for our field. And let's give it a close and see what we think.
All right, I'm ending the poll and sharing the results.
All right. Nobody thinks it's terrible. A real solid half think not great, but we're trying. And ain't it the truth? That's how I see it too. We're trying. And look how big a majority is right there in that middle mix, either a little bit towards the it's not so great or a little bit toward, we're doing all right. But we're in the middle, not strong, but not a total loss. And so the question of today is, I'm going to propose, can we raise that bar a little bit? Let's go to the second poll to see where individuals find themselves as advocates themselves for teaching artistry. And we're recognizing that, okay, so how would you describe your personal activity as an advocate for teaching artistry? And just a reminder, that's not advocating for yourself or your work or your program, but for the wider field. And we recognize we have a self-selecting group of activists here. So this may not be a generalizable result for the whole field.
It's looking good. We're almost there. We're at 75% have participated, 80. All right, should I close it?
You should, and remember it's anonymous, so no one's calling anyone out.
All right, here we go. Ending the poll, and I'm going to share the results.
All right, we're in the middle positive on this one. We've got a plurality who often take actions or frequently take actions. So we do have the activists present in the room. I suspected as much. I would say my experience of working with teaching artists and this book as an advocacy tool has led me to think the field is not quite as self-generating in their activity as our poll suggests. But 3 cheers for the people in the room, man. There are a smaller percentage who are overly active, thank heavens. I want to give a little history to this, partly to share my own bias at the frustration of 45 years of working at this issue and not seeing a whole lot of change in the visibility of teaching artistry, not seeing a significant expansion of our awareness in the arts, and certainly not outside the arts. So I'm going to give you 4 different events in my recent history that this is the history I have lived with. In 2011, we actually had a one-day summit of leaders of teaching artist organizations from around the country came to New York for one day. We broke into 5 working groups. We had an agenda that was going to change the status quo of teaching artistry. Each group had a timeline, a set of activities, next steps, responsible advocate, accountability, a team leader for each of the 5 groups. It was an amazing, optimistic day. And the day after, I started checking in with people on getting started, and exactly nothing happened. People were so overwhelmed when they got back to their regular lives that exactly nothing happened from our first summit focused on changing the status quo of teaching artist visibility. In 2012 to 2015, we had a project with the National Guild for Community Arts Education where teaching artists, they made a deal so teaching artists could come free. And we worked during the conference to create resources for the field. And stuff really got happening. In fact, that was the genesis of the asset map and the TA manifesto and the pay rate calculator and a couple of other resources generated from this remarkable 3-year volunteer work by teaching artists. And just the next year, we were going to start a national initiative, and the guild kind of chickened out because it might have cost them a little money. And the teaching artists themselves were starting to say, if I'm going to have to keep volunteering, I think I should be paid. And the energy went out of it. Thank heavens those projects, the ones I mentioned, actually came to fruition, including Courtney Body's Pathways tool. So good stuff came out of it, but the energy fell apart. Then in 2016, I was able to get, after years of nagging, grant makers in the arts to pull together a one-day national summit of funders who fund programs that use teaching artists. So there was probably 15 major funders, brought in a bunch of teaching artists and advocates to give them our best shot for a day. And we laid it out. And these funders cop to the fact that they completely rely on teaching artists in the programs they fund and that they give exactly nothing to build the field of teaching artistry. We then moved into, so what are you going to do about it? And the answer was nothing. They admitted it was terrible, it was unfair, and the reasons they weren't funding remained important to them. It doesn't fit conveniently in our funding categories. Whatever lame-ass stuff they came up with, they admitted it was lame-ass. But we ended that day not having gained a single inch of ground with a one-day summit. And then there was this book, which I've had many conversations in this year when it's come out, where teaching artists will say, oh, it's so great, I really love this book. And I'll say, and its purpose is for you to use it to build new advocates, free copies you can give to people. And the vast majority of the times that idea had never occurred to the teaching artist. And when I said, well, could you imagine yourself using it? Can you think of someone you'd like to give it to? And they're stumped. They've never thought of themselves in that role. Some of them kind of try to come up with something, but it made me aware that the status quo for our field of teaching artistry is most teaching artists, with the exceptions of the people in this room today, actually think it's somebody else's job, feel they don't know how to do it. These are the things they've told me. They just don't feel they are capable to actually be advocates to raise the field. And it's my belief no field ever got visible and got powerful if its participants aren't standing up and moving the field forward. I asked 3 of our colleagues to share a few thoughts about this issue of teaching artists and advocacy for the field. And I asked them to just be really brief because I knew we'd be running long at this point. So just a few thoughts from different perspectives from Carrie and then Victor and then Jeff, about this issue. What is your understanding? All three of them are super advocates for the field of teaching artistry, but what is your experience of teaching artists as advocates for the field? And Carrie, how about you first?
What is my experience as teaching artists as advocates for the field? Well, I think that the asset map is all about making visibility. It's about being proud of calling yourself a teaching artist, and knowing that this definition of what is a teaching artist is ever changing and very personal to an individual. Being in co-executive leadership for TAG, I've noticed that a teaching artist in North Dakota feels differently about that word, teaching artist, than one in Texas, than one in Florida, than one in New York, where I'm based. And that there's a lot of nuance to that definition. But I think that what is really clear is that they share. I am someone who I am an educator. I am someone that is part of that role, as well as an artist. They connect to both of those things. And I work a lot in schools with a lot of certified teachers. I work a lot in public schools and things like that. But I know my place when I go in as a teaching artist is to highlight to the students and to the principal and to whoever's around me that I am an active artist. I'm a professional. I'm part of both unions. And that it's my relationship to teaching is different from their drama high school teacher as well. So I think it's just embracing that term of teaching artistry, and also not calling out the differences, but calling in that, like, what I bring into a classroom is different than what a certified teacher brings in. And that there are multiple ways to be a teaching artist, that I could go to formalized school, and I've done a lot of trainings as well, but that I don't necessarily need a degree that says I am a teacher in order to be an educator. And I think that is often misunderstood in capacities in terms of payment and things like that. So just knowing that my experience working over 10 years throughout different public schools and community centers, and the lesson plans and the curriculum, all of those qualifications are just as of worth as a certification or a degree.
Super. Let's hear from Victor, and we may have a minute for you all to comment on one another afterward, but let's start with Victor, who's pinned.
Yeah, so I just want to say, Carrie, I very much agree about the terminology of a teaching artist. So from my perspective, I'll just expand on that as far as being an advocate. I think that one thing that has to happen in the field is we have to get more people to just call themselves teaching artists. It is a field, as you pointed out, that doesn't have a specific lane. But what we know for sure, and I really thought about this from Eric, I'll give you kudos, because I didn't think of myself as a teaching artist, but I had already been doing teaching artist work. It was upon reading the Music Teaching Artist Bible that I said, oh, it's this fusion between my artistry and my teaching. I think some challenges, I think I'll give a real world example, is that I worked for 2 organizations that had well over 40 or 50 teaching artists. And unfortunately, we called them fellows. And I fought while I was in that organization. I was like, they're teaching artists. Please just call them. But no one I was working for internally was a teaching artist. So to call them fellows felt more right for them. But what I kept trying to say is there is a large field, and this organization is employing teaching artists. And how powerful would it be? I didn't get my way. And that's unfortunate. I think some other challenges with that is right now there is a negative connotation in most people's mind around calling yourself a teaching artist. To be a teaching artist suggests that you're an artist who couldn't make it, or you're a teacher who dabbles in art. And we know as practitioners that that's not true. But unfortunately, that is the connotation. In fact, our fellows who I worked with didn't want to call themselves teaching artists because they felt that it diminished what they do. And I think we have to name it and be proud. I love that idea. And I think finally, along with the what do we call ourselves, things like that, I think that unfortunately, when we work in teaching artist organizations, there's this quote: "A jack of all trades is a master of none." We've all heard that quote. And I just want to throw out there that that quote is totally just a soundbite. It's never ever true. It's rarely, if you actually think about the most successful people in the world, it is rarely, if ever, true that your jack of all trades is a master of none. I think about Da Vinci. I think about Prince, the artist Prince. I think about Miles Davis. I think about all these jazz musicians who very much were teachers and performers. I think about Eric Booth. I think about myself. And so I think that one, I always push back very hard on that quote because it's just not true. And I think once again, when we start talking about fusing identities, there's this connotation that that's not as valuable as a purely teacher or a purely artist. And we know that that's not true. So I think when it comes to movement building, we have to call ourselves a certain name. I mean, the first step to creating a revolution is we all have to be flying under the same banner. So I do think what we call ourselves. I have some thoughts around the money thing, but to this question in particular, I wanted to speak to that as far as movement building and always using that term and calling yourself that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Carrie, can you pin Jeff?
Absolutely.
Well, good afternoon from New Hampshire. So my headline would be, and I love to mix metaphors, to be a squeaky wheel, from inside the belly of the beast of teaching artistry. Its advocacy is not just external, that, are we going to get appointments to go talk to legislators or funders, or, have that elevator speech ready to give that kind of advocacy, but also, many of us, we work as teaching artists within overlapping circles of organizations. And so, the State Arts Council might be one where we're listed on the Teaching Artists Registry. I've worked with Young Audiences as an organization, and other organizations in Utah, in Georgia, and there's a lot of overlap. There's artists who I may see, get a chance to work with, that are in several of those overlapping circles. But for the most part, I'm stunned at how many teaching artists who are in one bubble are unaware of teaching artists in other bubbles. And so I think that for me, advocacy is community building amongst people who see themselves as teaching artists, but and everybody loves to point at COVID at like, well, we're independent contractors, but now we do that so much more in isolation since the pandemic. But I'm not willing to accept that as an excuse anymore. I think that it's time to find reasons to gather. And yes, we can use Zoom, and we all have started to use it a lot, and it cuts our carbon footprint and all that good stuff. But there's nothing like meeting in person with other teaching artists. And every time I've been in a circle, when that happens, sparks fly. We inspire each other, we bolster each other. And I just did a meeting last week using Eric's book with about 15 artists from Georgia, teaching artists. And boy, did we all get riled up. It was very good energy. And we came out of there fired up, ready to, develop strategies together for being more involved in advocacy work.
Beautiful. I want to make a couple of comments, and then we just have a minute or two for you all to comment on one another. First of all, and sorry if I sound grumpy around this, for 45 years, the issue of the title teaching artist has been a shutdown issue for our field. Can we not get past that? In the International Teaching Artists Collaborative, people call themselves by all kinds of different names, and we've just said, screw it. Call yourself whatever the hell you want to call yourself. Call yourself Tuna Head. It doesn't matter. It's the work. And so my thought is, can we find ways to get past the shutdown issue of semantics? I am, well, I'm really that, but I'm this, that depletes the energy, leaves us invisible and much more powerless than we really are. I also hear the lack of awareness in our field, partly because we get segmented by title, by place we work. We are way more present and way more powerful than our identity is. And so part of what I'm trying to shake with this particular tool is, can we change the status quo, or are we going to be stuck with this not just till I croak, but till everyone either gives up or croaks? Can't we do better in this? And if it's not going to be us, from the grassroots practitioners who rise up to change the status quo that's got us stuck, who else is going to do it? No one else is going to do it. So that's my challenge to the field. Any quick cri de coeur, any strong statements from our three colleagues here before we invite our participants into discussing this?
Yeah, I have a quick one going back to being in person and doing real world things. I think, unfortunately, a word that I bristle at these days is content. However, I think in order to show and differentiate what the work looks like, as opposed to, because I love that somebody's like, oh, yeah, sometimes I'm just a guest artist and I come in. That's not the same. I think that there is a long term aspect to teaching artistry. From what I've seen, there is usually some sort of SEL, socio-emotional learning aspect to it. There's a creative aspect to it. And I think that, unfortunately, I don't like being on social media all the time, but I do recognize that we're going to need that real world content to show this is how it's different. This is how it looks long term. This is not just a teacher. This is not just an artist, but this is this very unique style of working that we can display and show the world, and in particular, show the gatekeepers, right? Working with schools across various networks, every teacher loves teaching artists. They love it. They're like, oh my God, I'm so happy you were here. I'm so happy. But we're looked at almost like a tool for the teacher, as opposed to something that is a individual augmentation of what's happening within the classroom. I believe that we augment, I believe that we lead, but one thing, we're not a teacher assistant. And I think oftentimes we're treated as a temporary resource to be utilized. And the last thing I'll say on that is, we need people to stop doing teaching artist work for free. It's a lot of very passionate people, and they're usually the best candidates for leading the work, but they're so passionate. They say, oh, well, I perform a lot, but I have a little extra time. I'll just volunteer at a school. And unfortunately, in a capitalist society, if you don't charge for things, it's not looked at as valuable.
Any other real quick comments from Carrie, Jeff?
No, real quick, Victor, I just appreciate what you mentioned about funding and not, doing the artwork for free. I think that starts change, right? Yeah.
I'll just say that I want to encourage all teaching artists who love their art form. They just love their stuff, to not just stay within the confines of their primary art form. That as a field of teaching artists, that we have so much to learn from each other. If we, I've designed professional development retreats for the State Arts Council in Georgia, and had visual artists go, well, there's a workshop this afternoon with a dancer, but I've got nothing to learn from a dancer. And my response is, oh, is that true? Oh, really? Because I've learned tons as a sculptor. I've learned tons from collaborating with dancers and attending their workshops. So I just want to encourage us to not stay in those restrictions.
Super. Let's bring in our participants into breakout groups so you can actually wrangle with a specific challenge I want to bring to the field, basically. I mean, you've heard my urgency around these topics. And so the challenge for the breakout groups, you're going to be in groups of 4. Should we work to change the status quo of teaching artists advocacy in the field, or should we just accept what we've got? We all know it's hard. We all know we're too busy, not paid enough, all that stuff. We know that. We know there's these semantic problems. But should we make an effort to change the expectations of what you do as a teaching artist to advocate for teaching artistry? And if your group decides yes, what is a sustainable, reasonable, valuable expectation to propose? What might we set as a bar to take time to let the whole field know, if you're a professional teaching artist, this is the expectation for what you will do as an advocate for the field. And it could be that you think, nope, we really can't ask that of teaching artists. Let us know that. Or you could think, no, we could ask this of everybody, and that would change the status quo. So you're going to be in breakout groups of 4, and there's a Padlet available for groups during this breakout time to write any conclusions you come to, any agreements. We could ask them to do this. We can maybe ask them to do that. I mean, we could say, if you're a professional teaching artist, you use the word teaching artistry 10 times a month. I don't know what it is, but can you get a specific expectation that addresses the semantic problem, that addresses the invisibility problem in a way that is respectful and sustainable for our field to say, this is what we expect a professional teaching artist. So there's the Padlet link from your breakout group. Be ready to access that Padlet and write any notes in. And after your breakout, we're going to have a chance to look at those together. So off we go for about 12 minutes for you to do some quick thinking together and get any notes onto that Padlet.
Wonderful. All right. I am just going to move a few people. And we are 1, 2, 4. Okay. Gonna open all the rooms.
I'm going to stay here with you.
Sounds good.
Oh, okay. We got Sam and Ori, and there we go. People are finding their rooms.
Yes. And let's see.
Sam in Australia.
Nice. Okay.
Sam, if you're there and stuck, let us know.
Yeah, and I can also, Sam, put you in a breakout room by yourself if you're not in a space where you can chat with other people. I can put you in a solo breakout room. Just let us know. Let's see. Victor. Victor wanted to join one of the things. So I had a breakout room for just you and Victor and Jeff, but they joined other groups. So
Perfect.
cool. Oh, great. I'm just going to do a little bit of broadcasting of just the question in the Padlet.
Super. And
So
while you do that, I'm going to go pee.
All right, sounds good. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. Thank you for doing that. That was way not enough minutes for a really big topic, and I apologize for that. Take a look at the answers that came up on the Padlet. Carrie is showing them now. And I want to point something out because it's been so common in my experience of urging teaching artists to use this book as a resource for advocacy, which is lots of comments about things we should advocate for, comments about difficulties that people encounter, but not many Padlet comments here about the very question that was asked, which is, what might we expect of teaching artists themselves to take advocacy actions? We see stuff that's in the way of that, and we see things that would be great to have happen. but it's tough to get our minds focused on what teaching artists themselves should begin to think of as their responsibility for building the field. And apologies for talking while while you're trying to read, but I was chatting with Carrie over the break that at ITAC, International Teaching Artists Collaborative, we're changing over to a new management system where we'll be able to track things about members more effectively. And I'm urging them, and I don't know if I'm going to succeed here, that we set an expectation that if you're going to be in the activist category of members, you will agree to take at least one action every month to advance the field of teaching artistry. And we'll list some actions, like you'll have a conversation with someone who doesn't know about teaching artistry, or you'll write an email to someone that might take advantage of teaching artistry, or you'll put this in the hand of a school principal at a school where you're working, and make sure that principal takes a look at it. So our focus is, and we have just a couple of minutes for comments if anyone has it, about this elusive challenge of establishing a bar for the field, bust the status quo that has kept us so invisible for 45 freaking years. Is there a way to set an expectation that is sustainable and respectable? What do you think? We had a couple of comments on that order in the Padlet, but anyone have a quick comment about that expectation itself? And you can just unmute and holler out. Barry.
Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking as you're talking, I don't know if what I'm thinking but I realized that that it would be easy for me to incorporate into what I say several times a day. Hi, I'm Barry Stewart Mann. I'm with such and such organization. I'm an actor and a storyteller. And when I do an introduction, I could say, and I'm a member of the International Teaching Artists Collaborative and the Teaching Artists Guild, and I am a credentialed teaching artist with young audiences. And just that 15 seconds, so that becomes part of my introduction, as I talk about what I do as a theater artist and my degrees and whatever. That's something that we can probably all do.
Beautiful. I put it on my email. I put active teaching artist as my job title. Anytime we are asked to talk about our work to anyone, can we include the phrase, I'm a teaching artist, which is part of a large national and global workforce? Nicole.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I think two things. First, exactly what you just said about introducing yourself as a teaching artist, I think is really important, and following up with the question, do you know what a teaching artist is?
Bingo.
People always say, oh, you're an art teacher. No, teaching artist is not an art teacher necessarily. I like to say we are artists who use arts methods to solve problems in various different domains. That's how I use myself. Secondly, an important point is when we talk about advocacy, I always feel like the word advocacy is connected somehow to problems that need solving. And teaching artists, even though we work with nonprofits, we are actually oftentimes business owners. So if we look at new jobs that have been created that didn't exist 10 years ago, like a social media manager, SEO manager, or whatever field you can think of, introducing a new job through the perspective of being a business owner is a very different place to approach it from than fighting for, do you understand what I do?
Beautiful. Just everyone, we're really short on time. So can we have quick comments from Joanne, Anu, and Christopher? Those are the hands I've seen. Joanne.
I'll be quick. One of the things that I came up with, because one of the things I love about your latest book, Eric, for me, is that you tell a lot of stories in it. And I think storytelling is such a strength for the artist, you know. And I don't think we get enough of our stories out there. I think we get them out in the K through 12. We're doing this, and now we know there's so much stuff right now with working with seniors, you know. I just feel if there was a way to be able to present things with more of a storytelling way, because people respond to stories. It's not just to titles, but to stories. So I just want to throw that out.
Yes, and then the challenge becomes, how do we create opportunities where that story can be told? Is it to a Rotary Club lunch? Is it a letter to the editor? Is it an email out of the blue to someone who you think is going to be responsive? That's taking the act that uses this power tool of stories. Anu.
So I think that experiential knowledge needs to be brought to their attention, and it's important, possibly elevated in some cases. And if I would think that when I have access to talking to the organization directly, either by email or by meeting, to actually speak directly with them. And the storytelling, this dovetails off Joanne's comment. Whenever I employ that in class, I definitely make the point that I'm a teaching artist, and that I'm bringing what they're going to be in several years into the classroom. Like, they are going to now be in this field, or they may be, or they'll be touching upon it in some way. And I use it to connect the classroom to their community and to their futures. So I make it very clear, but yes, I feel like that's not valued enough, and by some people, and some people totally get it.
Beautiful. So the advice there is to use every occasion where we're teaching as an opportunity to introduce the wider field, that I am a part of something bigger than just me teaching you here today. Use those occasions. Christopher.
Okay, I'm proposing a class to Montclair State University, College of the Arts, but we're going to blend in with the College of Education and the College of Business on the teaching artist. And now I propose that to the art department, the arts School of the Arts. They understand a little bit more about what that is. And, you know, as I suggested to my group, we might get one teaching artist out of 30 in a class. However, we're promoting the idea. We're building it for educators and business people as well. They'll understand it more as how they come out. So
Beautiful. That's what this book was written, so you could hand it to someone who is not going to become a teaching artist, but somebody's cousin's friend who expresses an interest in the arts and is in healthcare.
that's right.
Here's how artists can help you accomplish the things that are most important to you.
Yeah, I'll propose that as a book.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
If you want a certificate, we can print you a certificate of a teaching artist. That it
We
would be
can do
hard for
that
us.
too. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Who's that?
If you go to the website of the book, teachingartistmakingchange.com,
Yeah.
can get free copies of this book. I raised money for it, so you can use it as a calling card.
All right.
We're a little over time, and so I want to do a quick Padlet number 2, and we're not going into breakouts. Just write in. There's the link in the chat box. Let's see. That's not quite there's the question. How might we communicate? Oh, I just lost the question. How might we communicate a new expectation of active agency to the field? If we agree that we could ask something of our field, set an expectation that if you're a professional teaching artist or care about it, this is what you're expected to do. How might we communicate that to the field? How do we change a long-time status quo that it's not my job, I don't know how to do it, so I don't do anything? Or occasionally maybe something comes up and I do a little something. How can we change the field's understanding that there's an expectation now? Any thoughts? Go in Padlet.
And let me know if you have any trouble with the link. I'm just going to reshare it one more time because I think people are typing and asking. So yeah, how might we communicate a new expectation of active advocacy to the field? Active.
And one observation, that consistent communication is essential to change an expectation. A social media challenge, that's kind of fun. Short documentaries, short videos that get distributed. If we could come to agreement so that we have consistency across the expectation, we get enough, kind of generalized support for this idea and can really target what is a sustainable and valuable commitment. Get the word out, social media, word of mouth, put it widely visible. Yeah, publicity, the fun of a media challenge. Yeah, a formal introduction of it through a professional journal. Telling stories, but can we focus it on, here's the expectation set now. If you're a teaching artist or work in ways like teaching artists, this is what we do. What teaching artists do to raise the visibility of our field. A symposium on the topic. A motion picture. I always thought teaching artistry needed like a bodice ripping novel of how hot, how sexy and alive it can be inside teaching artist work. Sell some copies of a book that make people go, man, I want to get into that field. Yep, there's a suggestion there about just crediting teaching artists, saying it all the time, recognizing I am part of a big and powerful field. And if you don't even identify as a teaching artist, say, I'm an artist educator and I'm colleagues with teaching artists. We do the same work. Put it on a CV. Put it on your email. Soundbite definition, some images, some visual images for it.
Yeah. All right, Eric, we've come
Yes.
to that time.
Yes, we're at the end of our time. So thank you, everybody. We won't lose those Padlets. There's going to be further conversation about how we might actually target a small set of words and get those words out to every teaching artist. And once they start to see other teaching artists do it, maybe build an expectation that this is what teaching artists do. At ITAC, I'm going to try to get us to do it on the international scale. And thank you all for being I called you maniacs at the beginning. Let's just call you activists at this point. The Friday afternoon set who will give their last ounce of week's energy toward how we can elevate the aspirations of this field to break the invisibility barrier. Carrie, back to you.
Wonderful. I just want to give a just generous thank you so much, Eric, for publishing this book and having this workshop. Thank you, NAC members, for attending. Thank you so much, Victor, for sharing as a NAC member, Jeff as well, and to the other NAC members that are present too. Thank you so much for being here. You'll see in the chat there's a quick feedback survey, so please fill that out for us. And if you want more of the literary salons, they're already done, but they are recorded. And my colleague, Katie Rainey, the other co-executive director of the Teaching Artists Guild, already posted them on our YouTube channel, so you can rewatch the past ones from this month. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I really appreciate everyone, taking part of their Friday afternoon to be with us here at the Teaching Artists Guild. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for organizing.
Absolutely. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I think it's wild that we're still having that conversation around what do we call ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, we've been having that conversation since I met you, and I know you've been having it for so much longer.
Since before you were born, kid.